everybody knows who the World Bank is. The World Bank is an organization that basically drives world trade. They have been involved in more skullduggery around the world than probably any other organization outside of maybe the International Monetary Fund or maybe the World Trade Organization. But the World Bank is incredibly important. Since 1968, there have been 7 World Bank presidents appointed by the U.S. president. That's the prerogative of the World Bank, is that the U.S. appoints the president. The International Monetary Fund, by contrast, gets its leader appointed by Europe. But there's been 7 World Bank presidents over this period of time, and you can see the dates. 6 out of 7 have been members of the Trilateral Commission. This is not by accident that this has happened. They've gotten into the president's office, if you will, used that influence to make sure their man is at the top of the food chain, if you will. In this case, the World Bank. Now, let me give you another example here. The U.S. Trade Representative. This was a position that was created by Jimmy Carter in 1977. It's been occupied, as you can count here, it's been occupied by 11 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. Excuse me, I can't count. 10 people since 1977. Every president since has appointed at least 1, in some cases 2, Republican and Democrat, down the line. You can see the dates. This is how many are members of the Trilateral Commission. It's overwhelming, as a matter of fact. The current USTR is Susan Schwab, by the way. Robert Zoellick has gone on to be president of the World Bank currently. So that's not to say, by the way, that that Uter and Portman were good guys. They also carried out the general policies of the Trilateral Commission as well. They just didn't happen to be members. But you can see the evidence is overwhelming that they've used their influence over the years to get the key people that they wanted in key positions to influence the trade mechanism. And of course, we'll see an example of this in a minute, but here's the presidents and vice presidents who have been members of the Trilateral Commission. Of course, Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, George H.W. Bush was a member. Bill Clinton was a member, as was Al Gore, and in this administration, Dick Cheney. And you might be asking the question, well, is Barack Obama a member? No, he's not. But we'll see later how he's heavily influenced by these same people. Now, I want to just tell you how they work, how the system works here. You know, what the game is. Why do they want to go after the trade mechanism in our country? Well, the Constitution provides that treaties are to be negotiated by the Senate, and it requires a 2/3 vote of those that are present. So treaties are rather difficult to get through when a large organization like the Senate tries to negotiate something, even though it would be a committee. It's time-consuming. It requires scrutiny. It will be given scrutiny by several eyes looking at it instead of just a few. And it also requires a 2/3 vote of those present. Agreements, on the other hand, are actually negotiated not by the Senate but by the administration. And they require 1/2 of those present in the Senate. And so subsequently you have NAFTA and CAFTA and FTAA. You notice they all end in A. That means they're agreements, not treaties. And so these agreements, like NAFTA and CAFTA, were created by the administration. Again, the administration was that which was hijacked in 1976. And it requires only a 1/2 vote, not 2/3 vote. The next step, the degradation, if you will, has to do with regulations. And regulations requires only bureaucratic imagination. An example of this is the Security and Prosperity Partnership, which is trying to engineer the North American Union. And of course, executive orders are regulations that are issued by the President, and they're just summarily done. They're just put into place, and if somebody doesn't like it, they can sue them. Often they get sued. Now, the last thing in this track to think about is the Trade Promotion Authority, called TPA for short, or fast track legislation, that allows an agreement to be negotiated by the administration, require only 1/2 vote of those present, like above, but it does not allow any amendments, and it has minimum discussion. It also allows for a 30-day, or actually demands no longer than a 30-day time limit to ratify. The ratification is done on an up or down basis. It's either yay or nay. And this is a specialization, if you will, of agreements that I talked about above. EPA has been used by these Trilateral Commission members to ramrod stuff through over the decades, to ram stuff through that have literally sunk our ship. Where did it come from? Well, Fast Track Authority originally started with the Trade Act of 1974. Gerald Ford was the sitting president, and remember, he assumed the presidency after Nixon resigned, and he appointed as his vice president the unelected, of course, Nelson Rockefeller, brother to David Rockefeller. Together, they served for only a couple of years, but they did a lot of things in that two-year period. Fast Track Authority was used very selectively for Trilateral Commission goals only. In other words, it was used to fast-track the new international economic order. The GATT-Tokyo round, for instance. The U.S.-Israel Free Trade Agreement, for instance. The Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, for instance. What are those? You know, I've never heard of those before. Well, you've heard of NAFTA. NAFTA was used on the fast track. So was the GATT General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade Uruguay round, which actually created the World Trade Organization. That was a policy brainchild of the Trilateral Commission. Now, let's go a little bit deeper, and we'll just look at NAFTA to see how they actually have pulled something off so that you understand. Carla Hills was the USTR under George H.W. Bush. Carla Hills was the principal architect of NAFTA. Nobody disputes this, by the way, at this point. She was the driving force behind it, even though it was something like a 1,200-page document. It was a brilliant document, actually, on her part. But she was the principal architect. She was the signer of NAFTA with Bush Sr., and she's also a member of the Trilateral Commission, of course. So what kind of policies did she write into NAFTA? Well, she wrote in policies that were good for the Trilateral Commission, what they wanted for their new international economic order. And here we have Bush and Hills initialing NAFTA. You'll notice the lady in the red suit sitting down is Carla Hills. And President Bush Sr. is standing behind her. The reason that this was actually a photo op for Bush, because he was still running for the presidency, he was not allowed, actually NAFTA hadn't passed yet. This was just an initialing of the agreement. And then the parties would take it back later to their respective governments to have it passed into law. So the reason that Bush isn't signing this or initialing it is that he's not authorized to, so the next best person would be Carla Hills, and she did. There she is. And here you have later, just a few months later, as Bush exited office, Bill Clinton took the baton, continued the race, and was able to shove it through the Senate on fast track with a fast track priority. And here's Bill Clinton actually sitting down to sign into law the agreement that was so passed. You can see Al Gore standing behind him, by the way, and the representatives from Canada and Mexico are there also. Now here's Bill Clinton and Ernesto Zedillo, who became the next president of Mexico. And this was just an interesting, friendly thing. They look like they're pretty chummy to me, more than just a super formal thing. Both of these people are members of the Trilateral Commission. It's absolutely amazing. So Mexico has some members of the Trilateral Commission now as well. Ernesto Zedillo is one.